guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, and we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons and legal drama. TSR, the new TSR, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but TSR is suing Wizards of the Coast. TSR is a new company. This is not the same TSR that was absorbed by Wizards of the Coast back in the 90s, but they do have a lot of familiar names, including Ernie Gygax, who is the son of Gary Gygax, creator of Dungeons & Dragons. They're also circling, I guess, some of the old school D&D writers, game developers, etc. I don't know what the long-term plans are, but they have already released their first game. I know a lot of people were like, well, they just got the trademark, the TSR. They're not going to release games. Apparently, they are already releasing games. They've been developing games. And I had to wonder how long until there would be some kind of a lawsuit, because ever since it was announced that a new iteration of TSR was coming back, it's been nonstop attacks. We've been covering it on Clownfish TV. That, there are some people in the tabletop community that do not think this company should exist. They should definitely not be using the TSR name, even though they have people involved that were part of the original TSR. And, they've gotten themselves banned from Gen Con. And again, I think it just comes down to possibly, it's what I think is going on, possibly Wizards of the Coast weaponizing people in the community to take down TSR before they have a chance to, actually get a toehold in the gaming industry. Now, you'd think it wouldn't be that big of a deal, really. Like, okay, they want to use the name. They've got Ernie Gygax on board. They're no threat to Wizards. Wizards still owns Dungeons & Dragons. TSR has no claim whatsoever to Dungeons & Dragons. But I have seen non-stop attempts to harass this company out of business ever since it was announced that they were coming back. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I'll be honest. I mean, this is a guy who has covered the Comicsgate situation, and I have never seen anything like what is going on with TSR. Literally, they announce they exist, and like the entire tabletop industry loses its collective shit. And they were trying to get them. They were trying to get Ernie Gygax because he did a live stream, and he said a couple of things that were taken out of context, and they tried to paint them as being a bunch of racists and misogynists and homophobes. And that's actually the crux of what's going on here. TSR is suing Wizards of the Coast. They have a campaign up on Indiegogo. I didn't know anything about it until yesterday. I had some people tell me. And apparently what they're doing, as I understand it, and I'm no lawyer, so don't, hold me to this, but as I understand it, their bone of contention with Wizards is that they're putting these disclaimers on older products, TSR branded products, most notably D&D, and they've only done that in the last year or two. For diversity and inclusion reasons, they've been disclaiming a whole bunch of old D&D product, and according to TSR, this actually harms the creators of the original modules and game manuals and such, like Oriental Adventures. That's some of it. I went through Drive-Thru RPG. Here we have a module talking about the slave lords, and of course it has, this disclaimer on it. We at Wizards recognize that some of the legacy content available on this website does not reflect the values of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise today. Some older content may reflect ethnic, racial, or gender prejudice that were commonplace in American society at the time. Depends on where you went. These depictions were wrong then and wrong today. This content is presented as it was originally created, because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. Dungeons & Dragons teaches that diversity is a strength, and we strive to make our D&D products as welcoming and inclusive as possible. This part of our work will never end. Well, the problem is TSR is still on the cover, and some of these writers are still working or attempting to work in the industry, and apparently they're having a hard time now finding work because they're being associated with racism and sexism and misogyny. And we've seen them try to drag Gary Gygax through the mud. They've taken interviews he's done in the past, message board posts, and tried to paint him as an alt-right bigot and all this other nonsense. And it seems to be coming to a head. Now, whether or not they're going to be successful, I don't know. But they're trying to get Wizards to remove that disclaimer, and I don't know what the next step is beyond that. I'm just going by the information they have here, but they are claiming it's actually damaging the TSR brand, it's damaging the writers, and it's damaging the community. So let's talk about that. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 245,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk about Tabletop. We never really talked much about Tabletop, and I know I've told you the story before, but I tried to get my kids into Tabletop, and I was kind of shocked at how weird the quote-unquote community has gotten over the last probably 5 years, 6 years. That yes, it's become more quote-unquote diverse and inclusive in some ways. I mean, actually, I remember playing when I was a kid, and it was pretty diverse and inclusive. Mostly misfits played D&D, but I digress. But it's become very gatekept, and it does feel like they're going after a certain demographic, even with mainstream Dungeons and Dragons. We've done videos talking about how they're kind of pandering to shippers and sort of this Tumblr culture has bled into tabletop gaming, which is fine. I mean, I think the gaming table should be welcome or a welcome place for everybody, but it's become a zero-sum game. It's either you're on board with the Tumblr version of D&D or tabletop, or you're a bigot, a racist, a misogynist. There's no room for old heads to play. There's no room for people who maybe want to play games that have content that maybe isn't as acceptable by some people. Frankly, it's your table, it's your game. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, right? But officially, Wizards has been chasing the Tumblr audience, and a lot of that's because of Critical Role, I think. And again, I'm not throwing shade at Matt Mercer and company. I mean, they have a very successful business, but that culture, the people that have followed them, the same people that turned on them when they found out how much money they were making, that culture has sort of taken over the tabletop industry to the point where if you're not on board with everything that these people believe or stand for now, whatever the political soup of the day is, I guess. If you're not on board with that, then you will actually get blacklisted from conventions, and TSR has been on the receiving end of that. But make no mistake, I think it's all about money. I think at the end of the day, I think that Wizards of the Coast is somewhat afraid not afraid that TSR is going to come in and take over, but I mean, they are concerned that we've got some of the original crew coming back using the TSR name and making tabletop games. And, again, I've never seen anything like it, but here's the campaign on Indiegogo. Justin Lanassa, who is the CEO of the new TSR, you can go out and watch this video. But here's their campaign. TSR has launched a campaign to stop Wizards of the Coast. Become a champion of TSR and support TSR's campaign against Wizards. TSR is taking a stand against Wizards of the Coast, WotC, and its wrongful bullying of TSR or trademarks, and its public libeling and slander of those who helped create TSR-based Dungeons & Dragons products. Again, they're throwing this disclaimer on all the old school stuff. It was racist, it's misogynist, it's homophobic, yada, yada, yada. Wizards of the Coast has continually bullied TSR regarding TSR's legally owned trademarks. Now, Wizards let TSR lapse years ago, and they never enforced it. And I think it's kind of weird they still, keep the logo on the old D&D stuff. I mean, they could have scrubbed it and just threw Wizards, on there and still sold the PDFs, but whatever. There actually was another version of TSR between the original, 70s, 80s TSR, 90s TSR, and the new TSR. There was a second version which they published top secret, and they let the trademark lapse as well. But Wizards, to the best of my knowledge, never had an issue with them using TSR because to them, TSR basically means Dungeons and Dragons, and that's the trademark they're enforcing is Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know if there have been, I don't have any inside knowledge in that regard, if there have been legal threats from Wizards to the new TSR to cease and desist because they own that trademark. I guess my feeling on that, and again, I'm not a lawyer, is if it meant so much to you, why did you leave it lapse, decades ago? I don't know. And judges will probably ask that too. Even if they're selling TSR branded, PDFs, they bought the content, but I don't think since they are no longer publishing as TSR, but rather Wizards, I don't know if a judge would rule in their favor. They'd be like, you let this lapse. If it meant so much to you, why Hasbro, a multi-million-dollar corporation, why did you not spend a couple $1,000s and register this trademark? Wizards of the Coast has continually bullied TSR regarding the legally owned trademarks. Wizards has refused to answer all of TSR's repeated requests that they show any proof of their claims. Wizards has the vast resources behind them and is implying to bring them to bear down on TSR. I don't know if Wizards has a case. Because again, it's like you let this lapse. You did. You bought that company. You bought that IP. So you own Dungeons and Dragons, absolutely. And you own all the old content. But you don't own the trademark anymore because you're not doing business under that name. But they have different Dungeon Hobby Shop campaign tiers. And here's, I guess, the meat of this lawsuit, because I was confused. I have to admit, I looked at it and I'm like, I don't understand what they're trying to do. TSR will also fight to have the WotC legacy disclaimer removed. That's what we talked about. This old stuff's racist, it's homophobic, it's misogynist. TSR is suing WotC for trademark declaratory judgment of ownership. Okay. TSR will also pursue in the near future having WotC remove the legacy content disclaimer placed on TSR-based Dungeons and Dragons and other products, and retractions of any other libel and slander which alleges that racism and other heinous beliefs are incorporated into those products. So their position, as I understand it, is because of this disclaimer, which they just put up last year, because they wanted to get on the diversity and inclusion train. Orcs are racist, drow are racist. Since they're painting all the old TSR material with that brush, it's also harming fans, harming people who worked on that old content. Again, as I understand it, that seems to be the angle that they're going for. This disclaimer attempts to make a statement of fact argument and therefore paints all the writers, editors, artists, and consumers of those products as supporting those alleged prejudices, stereotypes, and bigotry wrongfully claimed to be part of those products. So we've got people that are still working or trying to work in the industry, and hey, guess what? Your 40-year-old module, yeah, it's racist, and so are you. The statement by Wizards of the Coast opens a possibility for the producers and players of these legacy products to face ridicule, face the labeling as bigots, racist, misogynists, and worse, cyber and physical attacks. So here's the disclaimer. Any leftover funds go to the Gygax Memorial Fund out of Lake Geneva. This is going to get ugly, guys. I'm going to be honest. Regardless of what you think of the situation, Wizards has been pretty much uncontested in tabletop. It's like Wizards and everybody else. And to have even a shadow of the old TSR rear its head, I think they're going to freak the fuck out. I'm going to be honest. If they're not doing so already and we're just not privy to that, which is probably why they're doing this, to preemptively shut them down. Because I have no doubt that they're going to go after them and say, you can't go start another company called TSR because we bought TSR 20 some years ago and whoopsie doopsie forgot to register the trademark and forgot to lock people into a never ending non-compete agreement or whatever the deal is. So this is going to be interesting. And, there are all these rumors, about Hasbro getting ready to sell Wizards. I've been hearing that the most likely candidate to buy Wizards would be some Chinese gaming company. I don't know if they're going to want the headaches. I mean, if it were me, I'd be like, just fine, you own TSR, we'll take the logo off and we'll take the disclaimer off and get on with it so we don't have this mess being dragged out publicly. so that every time people Google Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons, this lawsuit pops up. I mean, they had a lawsuit with the creators of Dragonlance last year or the year before, and there's been a lot of controversy around the company. And then, for all their diversity and inclusion, they're supposedly treating their non-white freelancers poorly. All this drama. And this is just more drama that Hasbro probably won't want to deal with, if I had to guess. But they did put out here on their Twitter that they are going to be suing Wizards, or they actually did file the complaint. Here's the complaint. They did file it. And of course, Twitter reacted the way that Twitter would react. You would think that Twitter would react. I mean, mostly people forgot that TSR was a thing until they announced the other day that they were bringing product out. And now they're suing Wizards. And, Twitter is laughing. They're like, hey, this isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go. And I don't know the legality of it. I really don't. I'm not a lawyer. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for sure, because they are a huge company. But again, I do know, talking to people, that Wizards is a huge pain in the ass for Hasbro right now. They are. The behavior of some of their people, and it's constant bad news. And I think Hasbro's getting kind of tired of it. You don't see this kind of drama around Transformers or My Little Pony, do you? So anyway, I'm going to put a link to this Indiegogo campaign. You can check it out for yourself. See if you think it's worth supporting. Again, I don't know the legality of it. I don't know if they have a case, don't have a case. I do know that Wizards is losing their shit back channel. And they are probably weaponizing Wizard stands to attack TSR. And this might just be a preemptive strike. Good luck with that. I wish them the best if they think they actually have a case. We'll see what happens. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.